Happy days. I'm back on YouTube complaining about something. Lefty always says complaining means that I'm happy. I just think it's my hobby. I think my top hobbies right now are eating, sleeping, showering, and complaining. I think that means I'm an adult now. Anyway, yesterday I woke up, checked YouTube, and there was a video suggested to me. An RC viral 33,000 view car setup video. Now, obviously, I had to check that out. It was a Hall Brothers RC video. The Hall Brothers race 10 scale in the UK. I believe the younger brother won the European Championship. He did, two-wheel drive. That's crazy. It's good to see that there are young guys out there putting out quality content on YouTube. That reminds me, I'm wearing this. This is my gold medal for winning the Finnish National Championships last year. And I'm just wearing it to remind the Finnish youngsters that I still got it. I won my first national championship 20 years ago, before some of those little shits were born. On that note, let's check out this video because I actually found something to complain about. Anyway, there you go, dudes. Grandpa still got it. But don't get me wrong. I mean no disrespect. I love what the Hall Brothers are doing with their YouTube channel. And actually, the more RC videos we have, the merrier. In this video, I'm going to challenge the Hall Brothers. And I hope I get a video response proving me wrong. Or maybe right. Who knows? Watch this video to find out what the challenge is. Anyway, let's go check out this video and see what I found to complain about. Okay, so it's this video here, Inverted Shocks, the new RC trend explained.
It's the video you've all been waiting for. Shocks upside down. You might have seen a few pictures or comments on Facebook, things like that, of cars with their shocks the wrong way up. And it seems crazy, right? Why are people doing this? And where has all this come from? So what are the theories behind it? And why are people doing it?
By the way, you know why this video went viral, right? It says, the new RC trend explained. And then everyone felt the need to go in the comments, say, oh, I did this back in 1999. So, hundreds of comments, boosted the video. There you go. Yeah, it's not a new trend, but let's keep going.
Well, hopefully in this video, I'm going to try and answer these questions, provide a few theories about what it might be doing to the car and why it's working. So yeah, let's get straight into it. So why did we first try this? What made us think, let's put the shocks upside down and maybe make ourselves look really silly? Well, we were at a track and, you know, we were just starting to test for indoors. It was about October time and we were just struggling with, like, when we accelerated out of the corners, it felt like all the weight was transferring back and we were just understeering a bit out of the corners.
Okay. This is when I knew I have to make this video. Later in the video, he also says this.
One of the big historical problems with four-wheel drive indoors is the weight transfer of them between on and off throttle. You see the cars with front wheels in the air and then back wheels in the air as they're braking. They've just got a lot of traction indoors and it can cause these problems with weight transfer.
I think it's a very common misconception that the movement of the car, so the car squatting on the rear, diving onto the front, rolling in corners, that is what is causing load transfer. Or that if you see a car that doesn't move a lot, it's not transferring as much load. If you see a car that's moving a lot, it's transferring a lot of load. And that's actually not true. It's almost the opposite. So suspension is not what causes load transfer. Suspension delays load transfer. And this is really important to understand if you want to understand how to adjust your car in different conditions. If you think about a go-kart doesn't have suspension, but it has load transfer. If you're familiar with invisible speed, I talk about initial versus overall grip. Initial grip is that instant load transfer. So you drive into a corner, you turn into the corner, and load wants to transfer onto the outside tires. If you don't have any suspension, that load transfer happens very quickly. The point of adjusting suspension is giving the driver and the tires time to react to a change. So when the suspension allows the car to roll, that's actually delaying that instant load transfer. So with softer suspension and more travel, allowing the car to move more, roll, dive, pitch more, you are delaying load transfer more. So a stiffer car has more initial grip and a softer car has more overall grip. That's how I like to explain it. So looking at how a car moves, you can determine where load is transferring, but just looking at it, you don't actually know the amount of load that's transferred. The more the chassis of the car is allowed to move, the longer it takes for load to transfer. Springs are what limit how far a chassis can move, and the damping determines how long that takes. But let's continue with the video now.
So we were really just trying to reduce the weight transfer of the car. We wanted the car to stay more consistent between on and off throttle. Didn't want that weight transfer to change the handling of the car. So, I mean, that's the main things we're turning the shocks over, is you're taking a lot of weight from up high and you're moving it down low. So that is the main theory really of why we tried it, just to reduce the centre of gravity and along with that, reduce the weight transfer of the car. And we tried it and it really did work. We gained a lot of steering when we're on throttle exiting the corners, and it did seem a lot faster to drive. And that made us think, if it reduces weight transfer on the two-wheel drive, how will it work on the four-wheel drive? One of the big historical problems with four-wheel drive indoors is the weight transfer of them between on and off throttle. You see the cars with front wheels in the air and then back wheels in the air as they're braking. They've just got a lot of traction indoors and it can cause these problems with weight transfer. So the first thought when it worked on two-wheel drive is, how will it go on this car? And so we tried it on the four-wheel drive. Obviously it's a lot easier to do the front as well on the four-wheel drive because you don't have to take loads off the arm to do it. So we ran it on both ends and we tested it a good few times on the four-wheel drive. And again, it really just kept the car so much flatter, especially on throttle. Wasn't wanting to transfer as much weight back and lift the front wheel. So yeah, we found it to be a big improvement on that as well. Okay, so the advantages and disadvantages. Well, we've already gone over the weight transfer. Since the centre of gravity is lower on the shocks, the car doesn't transfer as much weight, which obviously has quite a few benefits for carpet racing. Now, also another advantage is that there's less actual momentum to the roll of the car. Now, this is because there's not as much weight attached up high to the shock towers, which moves as the car rolls. So imagine you're going through a chicane, the car's rolling one way, then the other. If you've got less weight attached to the shock towers up high, then there's not as much momentum to the roll of the car. So it can change direction easier and more quickly. So since the shocks are just attached to the arms and they're not moving really as the car rolls, there's less weight that is moving in that scenario. So it allows the car to change direction quicker and generally feel a lot more nimble as well. Now, the big disadvantage is that since the shock bodies are attached to the arm, there is more unsprung weight. Now, this is bad when you get to sort of bumpy scenarios. You know, the wheel's got to really follow the track, because when there's more weight attached to that wheel, it's always going to be more difficult to control over the bumps. So that is the big disadvantage. Now also, having the shocks low down and not transferring as much weight back might lose you a little bit of forward drive, especially on the two-wheel drive in like lower grip conditions. So sometimes you want that weight to transfer back as you accelerate, and the shocks upside down is not going to help you with that.
Okay, so there we heard the arguments for the reasoning behind turning the shocks upside down. Now, while it's true that the center of gravity is slightly lower, and that is a benefit because when you have a lower center of gravity, the car won't transfer as much load. That's true. I don't think that that's the reason for the benefits that they feel on the smooth, high grip carpet tracks. I think the reason is actually that increase in unsprung weight. And I don't base this on any kind of calculations, just tests with lightweight bodies, carbon shock towers versus aluminium, lightweight wings, low profile cooling heads in 8 scale. I think that the bigger change is actually the unsprung weight. And this is my challenge to the whole brothers. I want them to try some different setup changes to see if they can achieve similar but even better results than just turning the shocks upside down. When the shocks are upside down and there's more unsprung weight, that means that as the suspension moves, it requires more force to move the wheel. As the suspension is moving and the wheel is moving, let's say you hit a corner, dot or something, there's also more momentum to the wheel movement, the suspension movement, since the entire shock body has to move with the wheel. What this does is it slows down the suspension movement. It's similar, but not the same as running heavier damping. So, okay, if you're running your shocks the normal way round, what if you go to heavier damping? Okay, maybe the car feels too lazy now. Another thing that could improve the car would be harder springs, but not just harder, shorter springs also. So these cars are not really designed for racing on carpet. So it's when I watch our 10 scale off-road cars on carpet, I always get reminded of this video of these trophy trucks running on asphalt. Now, 10 scale four-wheel drive, they aren't quite as bad as this, but you get the idea. To improve a 10 scale four-wheel drive on carpet, running shorter, harder springs would be the first thing that I would do. The reason for this is that the spring won't want to lift the car up much above ride height as it wants to do now. The problem that you can face is, because the shocks are still so long, that at full droop, the spring will just be loose on the shock. That's not a good thing. So maybe you would have to run another shorter, softer spring just to keep that main spring in place. Or something like this. I don't know if any 10 scale manufacturers make springs like this. This spring is for the Mayako, formerly for the JQ buggy. And you see that the top portion here, very soft, and then the main part of the spring harder. And the idea here is that the soft part of the spring collapses really quickly. Around ride height, it's collapsed. And then below ride height, the spring is harder. And the idea here is that as you accelerate, for example, the front spring doesn't want to lift up the front much above ride height. As you brake into a corner, the rear spring doesn't want to push up the rear much on corner entry. So the car stays more flat. So that's a couple of ideas, but that's not really the main idea I have. The main thing that I think the whole brothers are feeling here when they turn the shocks upside down is a reduction in rebound. The main thing that I would like the whole brothers to try is an increase in rebound damping. Right now, our shocks are very simple. We have the same compression and rebound damping. There are some special pistons, like MIP have some pistons with flaps on them, so you can have different compression and rebound damping. And that's the kind of piston that I would like them to try. I would like them to try piston where they assemble the piston with the flap on the underside of the piston. That means that on compression, the flap opens, and then on rebound, the flap closes. So rebound will be harder than compression. When you slow down rebound, the car will drive a lot flatter around the track. It won't want to lift the nose as much when you accelerate, or the rear when you brake into a corner. The car won't want to roll as much. You gain a lot of corner speed. You gain a lot of response and precision in chicanes. You gain basically everything that you need on a high grip smooth track by increasing the rebound damping. And I would argue that that is a better solution than flipping your shocks around. The reason for that is that you can adjust it. You can't really adjust how much you flip your shocks around. It's like one setting. You flip it over and that's it. And also, in no form of racing around a track at high speeds is increasing the unsprung mass a benefit. It just isn't. And he actually even mentions it there in the video how it's worse in bumps. Well, that can become relevant when you are racing other cars, you bump into other cars, you clip a corner, you jump and land. In those situations, flipping your shocks upside down won't be as good. So instead, run the shocks normally, but adjust for more rebound damping. And I think that you will gain even more benefits by doing this. You thought I was done, didn't you? I'm not. One more thing, one final thing. Internal springs under the piston. They look like this, and various brands offer them, at least for 8 scale. I'm sure you can find some for 10 scale also. Or maybe you can find some springs in some ballpoint pens like we used to do back in the day. The idea of the springs under the piston is that they resist the final rebound travel. The car will yet again drive more flat. You'll feel that you can carry corner speed more easily, and the car will feel more predictable and precise on the smooth, high grip surface. So there you have it. Harder springs, shorter springs, internal springs under the piston, and increase the rebound damping. Some special pistons, the flap under the piston. The difficulty is to find the correct setup. So how big of a difference should you make between the compression and rebound? And also, how thick should the damping be overall, and how hard and how short can the spring be that you run? And where do you place that sort of separation between soft part of the spring and the hard part of the spring? But to keep it simple for now, if nothing else, just try the harder rebound damping and report back, because I bet that will be key to even faster lap times. So there you go. I hope the challenge is accepted, and I'm looking forward to a response video. And since we're on the subject of setup, don't forget that in a couple of weeks' time, the 20th of March, we start the live sessions again for Invisible Speed. So the 20th to the 24th of March, we'll have 2 meetings every day to accommodate different time zones. And what we'll be doing is we'll be working with Jared Thibault, David Ronefalk, and Robert Bachier, all 3 world champions, so highly skilled and talented drivers, and of course myself. Not as skilled as a driver, but I know a thing or two about car setup. And the idea is that we'll have live meetings covering car preparation. This is now for 8 scale off-road. Car preparation, the most common mistakes, driving advice, how to practice, how to test, and then we have the first 10 setup changes, which will be given out as homework. So everyone, including these world champs, they will have to go to the track and do their homework. So try these different setup changes. We start off with the basics: ride height, droop, camber, toe, etc. Everyone tries the same changes, keeps notes for what they feel when they make the changes, and then they have to choose their favorite setting from each of these options. And then in May or June, we will analyze the results and then continue the course. So new setup options, new homework, and covering even more advanced driving technique and setup and racing advice. So if you're not already a part of the Invisible Speed course, now would be a good time to join. And if you are, but your 1 year has expired, but you're still in there, we've got some bad news. Before we start the week, I'm gonna kick everyone out who has been in there for over a year. Been too busy. I've given you free extra time in there. So I hope to see as many of you as possible in the Invisible Speed live meetings starting on the 20th of March.